back with us, our resident mental health therapist.
Hello.
Hi, Nicole. We missed you so much. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
miss you guys.
We needed you last week. Last week we had Steve Baker, a master home inspector from Your Home Matters, and he was talking about the 203K program, and it's a lengthy process, and it entails a lot of paperwork and a lot of different steps, and so we were just missing you and your expertise
Oh,
last week.
thank you. I miss you guys too.
um, but as we approach the holidays, it can be a stressful time in general. Um, Not to mention, I'm not gonna say not to mention, but in addition to anyone that could be purchasing a home right now, because people do purchase homes during holidays, during winter. A lot of people try to be in their home before the holidays come up, so they can spend that first holiday in their new home, and it can be stressful, especially if timelines aren't met, deadlines aren't
Mhm.
met, because things do happen. In a perfect world, everything will be on time, it just goes smoothly, and rarely does that happen. You know, so I just wanted you to recap with us what we talked about on our first show with regards to handling stress and managing the stress that comes along with the process, because it can be a lot. Because a lot is being asked of the buyer, a lot can be being
Absolutely.
asked of the seller, and just managing that stress to ensure we make it to the finish line without
Absolutely.
getting too frazzled and just too worked up.
Absolutely. Um, One of the first things I always stress, and I'll keep on saying it, is having realistic expectations.
Yes, definitely.
Just being able to write down everything that you are expecting, being able
Mm.
to know what you're looking for in a home, in a neighborhood, in a school system,
Mhm.
neighbors, things of that nature that are important to you, whatever's important to you, making sure that you categorize them.
Mhm.
And then also one, two, three. What are your
Mhm.
top three? What are your top
Mhm.
five? What are your top 10? And go from there, so that when you see it, you know what you're looking for, and you know what it is that you're looking for. You're not kind of all over the place. A
Mhm.
lot of times we feel a little scatterbrained
Mhm.
when we really don't know. We don't have a
Mhm.
direction. We don't have
Mhm.
a focus. We're just like, I just want a house. I just want to be a homeowner, and that's wonderful. I think home ownership is excellent, but
Mhm.
we have to have a focus. We have to have a direction
Mhm.
in anything we do in life. And I'm a big believer in being a free spirit, but we still have to have
Yeah,
some form of a direction.
being
So that's probably the
prepared.
first thing. Being able to ask questions
Mhm.
to your realtor, to
A loan
the loan
officer. Yeah,
officer,
and even the title company.
and the
Yeah.
title company, making sure, in school they always say no question is a dumb question.
Yeah,
The reason why they say that is because it's not.
it's
It
true.
may sound silly to you, but if you knew the answer, you wouldn't be asking the
This is
question.
true. This is
You
true.
know,
And so many different types of questions come up. Things that, as you had even mentioned before, having a little notebook to write down
absolutely.
things, because questions come to you at various times when you're not necessarily with your
Right.
mortgage professional or your real estate professional.
Right, absolutely. So always, especially during this process, writing, having a notebook, being able to write down things. Is people laugh at me because sometimes I'm up in the middle of the night
Mhm.
trying to write stuff down, or I'm thinking about something, but that's because things hit us at the most inconvenient time, or
Mhm.
at the time that we're not with people that we can actually ask that
Mhm.
question to. But if we write it down, then when we see them, or when we're able to ask whoever the appropriate people are to ask, then we won't forget.
Yeah, that's true.
And a lot of times we get frustrated with ourselves. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot that. And or I've seen you, we spent the whole day together
Right.
looking at houses, and then I go home, I'm like, oh my God, I was supposed to ask her this question. Well, we had our notebook, we have everything organized in a sense.
Right.
We're able to ask that. um, and that helps us to manage our expectations as
Okay.
well. So
Yeah, that's a good point about being prepared, because I know for me, I don't write a lot of things down sometimes, but those are good tips to have a little notebook. I have had some clients who will have a little notebook and write things down. So I can understand how that can be important, because things do come up that you may not be thinking about. Or you could even be watching TV. I know I
mhm.
was watching a HGTV one
Yeah,
night.
our favorite show.
And, I was like, oh, wow, I've never seen that before. What is that? And even someone asked me, my best friend was recently licensed to a license
Okay.
for real estate. And she asked me a question, what's a salt box style house? I'm like, I don't know. I've never, we don't have those style houses in Maryland. So it was
Okay.
not something that I knew. But I can find out. I can find out what it is.
Absolutely.
So if someone has a question for me and I don't have the answer, I definitely can find out and direct them along the right path. Because it can also be frustrating when you have a question and don't know the answer and can't get the answer. So that's not something that we want, because we want to keep the stress level down. You want to be knowledgeable, and that's one reason why we are doing the show in this way, so that we can provide education, so that you can be a well-informed consumer, a well-informed buyer, a well-informed seller, so that you can move forward and make an educated decision with purchasing or with selling, because you'll have all the knowledge and you'll have the tips and the tools provided to you, so you know what you're doing, in a sense. So that's why we have different professionals from all aspects of real estate, things that you may not even think about.
It's also about building a relationship.
This is true.
If you really think about how you, like, for those that are dating or married, how did you get to know your significant other? You did it by asking questions, by talking, by spending time.
21 questions.
Right, 21 questions. And so it's the same thing. It's a relationship. You're forming a relationship with the people that are going to be in your life for at least 3 to 6 months, if not longer, depending on where you are, as far as the market's concerned, your credit's concerned. So, and doing that. And then also full disclosure is important too, because it's wonderful to want to buy that $500,000 house, but if you can only afford, the $200,000 house, let's be real. Let's full disclosure. And full disclosure is not just about income either.
That's true.
It's about everything, because sometimes you can make $200,000, but if you have $201,000 worth of debt, what difference does it make?
This is true.
Spending habits. So full disclosure will also help with being able to allow you to talk to your realtor, talk to your broker, talk to everyone who's involved, and they can say, okay, well, I need you to pay this off, or I need you to curtail that spending a little bit. It's making us uncomfortable. I don't know if we can lend you the money, but that helps. So just being open and honest as well, and that will help you in the process. The buyer, I should say, it will help the buyer in the process, because
definitely
the more comfortable. It's just like in that relationship, when you start getting comfortable, the reason why you start getting comfortable is because you've spent that time. You've done your due diligence. You put the work in. You've done everything that person has asked you to do, and now you guys are comfortable. Same thing in this relationship.
Yeah, that's true, and those were good points about full disclosure, because essentially the mortgage professional, and more so the mortgage professional than the realtor, the mortgage professional is more of an advisor, a financial advisor, because they're going to look deeper into finances, credit, debt, and income, and give advice on things that a person can do, as you said, to pay down debt on this, or maybe to open a new line of credit. They're going to tell you exactly what you need to do to have a more perfect financial picture, so that when they present your file to underwriting, which essentially underwriting is I would say the boss of finance, because everything goes through underwriting. Underwriting gives the stamp of approval. So I'm a little winded because I'm a little under the weather. So if I just, underwriting gives you that final stamp of approval to say, okay, this is a go or not. So it's definitely important to be open with the mortgage professional, because, like you said, if it's someone that earns $200,000 a year, but they spend $201,000, then that's not really going to work. And then also, just because I always tell people that, especially with the first home, it's not your forever home. It doesn't have to be.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to seek out the house that you're never going to move from. It's okay to have a starter home in a sense, and you definitely can have a nice starter home. It doesn't have to be a fixer-upper if you don't want it to be, and you don't necessarily have to go to the top of your budget for your first house. But as Nicole said, having those top 3 will help you to narrow down and say, okay, if these 3, I always say, what are your must-haves? So a lot of people, the most common must-haves are a garage, a basement, and a certain amount of bedrooms. So usually 3 or more bedrooms, at least a one-car garage, and a basement, whether it's finished or not. So that's not a bad criteria given a certain price range. That's not too bad. We can work with that. So things like that, you know, your must-haves. That's fine. You need to have that because that will help you narrow down houses. Because of course you don't want to go see 50 houses because you're not going to remember them.
That's also what will
yeah,
frustrate you.
Yeah, you will be frustrated because by the time you have gotten to the 50th house, probably 40 of them will already be under contract. So that's why it's important. That's why we always encourage buyers to narrow down their list, because just as you would go see something that you like, someone else is behind you or just came in before you and they like it too. So it's not that we're trying to push you and rush you, but if it's something that you like, you know, it's not like when you go to the department store and there are like 20 of those blouses or 10 of those pairs of shoes. It's not like that. It's just that one house. And so we want you to get what it is that you want. But it's definitely a relationship, and I do think it's important that when you're choosing a mortgage professional and when you're choosing a realtor, it's important to ask questions. Ask that mortgage professional and that realtor what types of buyers do they normally work with, because some mortgage professionals may really only specialize in commercial loans. That's not to say they can't do a residential loan, but that may be something that's important to you. Some people like to work with people who have specific experience. Just like with realtors, some realtors specialize in first-time home buyers, but some realtors specialize in people that are downsizing or maybe military relocations or just relocations, period. And so those things may be important to you because, especially for first-time home buyers and relocation, those are what I consider sensitive clients, because first-time home buyers are especially nervous, are especially, I would say, more easily frustrated. And that's not saying that they're bad people. That's just the nature of the transaction, because that is a lot. It's very different from when they go to rent an apartment. They just, you just fill out an application. You may or may not have to provide an income document, such as a W-2, and then you go from that to having to give everything except a skin sample.
Right.
So it can be frustrating because they ask for a lot of information, but I always say, just keep in mind that you're essentially asking to borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons why the underwriter and your mortgage professional asks for so much information. I mean, even sellers sometimes ask for what's called a financial information sheet, which basically lists information from your credit report. What do you have a car loan right now? What credit cards do you have? What balances do you have in your bank accounts? And, is there a child support obligation, an alimony obligation? They want to know that, because when they decide to accept the offer and take the property off the market, it's important to them to know that not only do they have a pre-approval letter from a lender, but that this buyer is well qualified, because they don't want to get halfway through the process and then find out, okay, the buyer isn't. And that's also important for the buyer, because you don't want to get halfway through the process and then realize, okay, I can't buy this house, and now the earnest money deposit is in jeopardy, and then you've gone through this.
You have to go through probate court in order to get it, which is even more stressful.
Yes, and then on top of that, if you've already moved or given notice from where you currently live, it's a chain reaction. So that's one of the reasons why we take certain steps, and why sometimes real estate professionals will require or be more demanding when it comes to a buyer having a pre-approval letter, because the main reason for that pre-approval for the buyer is so that they know what is it, how much are they going to be, how much will this institution lend them?
A realistic expectation, you know, and that's exactly what I'm saying when I say, you have to have a realistic expectation.
Definitely.
We can all have very high expensive taste, but if that's not where we are at that point in time, or at that point in time for us to buy, then we just have to be more realistic about what we're going to do, and that will actually lower your anxiety, your stress, your frustration. You may not like it at the beginning, but you'll love it in the end, because the process will be a lot more smooth.
And you'll have that knowledge, because it could be, and it's not always that a person can't afford something. It's just they may not want that payment.
Right.
Interest
Absolutely.
rates fluctuate every day, but right now I believe we're still at 4%. I think it's fluctuating back and forth between 4% and 4.25%, depending on the loan type. But if you only want a mortgage payment that's 2,000, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's not to say that you
It's
can't
actually
afford.
probably in this area wise to
Mhm.
actually do a lower payment than what you can
Mhm.
what the paper says you can afford, because again, things change.
They do.
And when it comes to our economy, we have a job one day, we don't.
This is true.
Sometimes as entrepreneurs, we our checks are beautiful the first week, and 2 weeks later it's like, where is it? So
Definitely. I mean, things can change in an instant. I've had that happen actually two times recently in the middle of the process. The buyer had lost their job.
hmm
They lost their job. And then another instance, the buyer was laid off
right.
in the middle of the process. And so it's definitely important not to max yourself out, because also you want to be able to enjoy your home. If you want
hmm
to do renovations, or if you want to decorate, or if you just want to travel, you still want to be
You
able
just
to
want to
live
live
life.
life. You don't
Yes.
want to be house poor. I mean, bottom
Exactly.
line is that you don't want to give all your money to the mortgage company, and then you're
Exactly.
sitting at home, just trying to call people to have them to come over. It was like, oh no, I'm out enjoying
Exactly.
life.
And bring your BYOF, bring your own
Right.
food. Bring BYOE, bring your own entertainment. You don't want that to happen. But it's definitely, we always talk about stress and managing stress, but that's the reality of it. And we want you to be informed. We want you to be educated so that you know what to expect. It's a great, homeownership is great, no doubt. But it's a process, and each step throughout that process requires you to give of yourself. And so when you have to do that, it's going to require your patience, and it's going to require you sometimes to not necessarily like what's being asked of you, because I
hmm
know one of the common complaints with buyers is that they just asked me for that. The loan officer asked me
hmm
for that. Now the processor is asking me for that. I just gave them that. But sometimes they do that because they want to make sure that the document that was provided is actually legit, because I've had that happen before. The lady didn't do it on purpose, but she was copying a document to send, and the paper was I think she was trying to fax it, and one of the papers was folded, and so it looked like someone had signed or initialed off on a document or something like
hmm
that. So they asked her to actually bring the document in person. So she had to explain that. She actually had to sit in front of a committee at the mortgage company to explain what happened, because it looked like she was trying to commit forgery or just some
Right.
type of fraud. So I'm pretty sure that was frustrating. But if you take the necessary steps to manage your stress, as Nicole first mentioned, if you write down your goals and you keep those in mind. Okay, look, this is my end goal. So no matter what happens in between this process, this is my end goal, and I'm going to make it to my end goal. And you have good professionals behind you. You make sure you have a good mortgage loan officer, or you choose a good financial institution that you want. If you don't necessarily know a mortgage loan officer, but let's say you want to use your local credit union or your local bank, that's fine if you feel comfortable, because some people do feel more comfortable using. Some people have banked with places for many, many
It's that
years. Yeah,
relationship.
yeah.
It's the
It's like when you're at
relationship.
the bank and someone comes in and say, "Hi, Miss Jones." I'm always amazed at that. How do you remember her face? All these people that come in, but I understand, because, like you
Well, when you
said,
invest, yes,
hmm
when someone invests in you, then they remember you, and
yeah,
that makes you feel good. So when you build a very good relationship with someone or in a situation,
yeah,
then it makes you feel more
yeah,
comfortable, and then your
definitely,
anxiety and your stress is lessened.
definitely. Definitely. When you're comfortable, you definitely feel less
hmm
stress. It's just like the first time when you meet someone, sometimes it's a little nervous, like, okay, I don't know what to expect. This person, a lot of people, when they meet me, they think I'm really serious and quiet, and then I crack a joke and they're like,
You
"Oh,
are though. How do you know?
I'm not really serious. I'm quiet, but I wouldn't quite say I was really serious. But I try my best to build my rapport quickly,
hmm
because I want people to be comfortable and
Good.
let them know that I'm here. Because, as you said, the process can be anywhere from 3 to 6 months,
hmm
but it depends on the transaction. I have a transaction right now where the young lady And her husband initially, actually, they were uh, fiance. They were engaged when they first came to me about 2 years ago. When we looked, and they didn't really find anything that they liked, so they said, "Okay, we'll take a break." And then they started back up looking around the beginning of this year, and they went under contract for a short sale in March, and they haven't gone to settlement yet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So various delays, various things have happened. Short sales are great, by the way. So, but sometimes they do require time. But the thing about the short sales are usually you end up getting a good deal. Because it is a distressed, so potential short sale, let me correct that, because it is a distressed sale, it's a distressed situation. It does require the third-party authorization from that seller's bank, but as I said, you can usually get really good deals, especially if you happen to come across a short sale that's already approved, because you already know, okay, that's the price that they're going to accept. And you don't have to wonder if, when you put your offer in, are they going to come back and say no, not 250,000, but 300,000. So that's something you don't have to worry about. But definitely over these past couple of months, I mean, we've seen so much of each other, and I'm constantly having to contact them and say, okay, I need this information from you. What about this? But because they have that level of comfort, they know that their mortgage professional and their title company and even the seller's agent has been tremendously helpful throughout this process to get them to that settlement table. That's because good. They are first-time home buyers too, and they've shown extreme patience. They've been very cooperative, and we've all worked together to meet their goal. So it's been really good. But in general, transactions don't take that long. I probably would say it takes about maybe a week to be pre-approved, because you do have to send in documents. So normally it's pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements. Those are the main things. Or if any other type of accounts you have, maybe a retirement account, like 401k, thrift savings plan, things like that, to send those in. But usually about a week for the loan officer to review that and issue the pre-approval letter, and then we get to go house hunting. Okay. And then we make that list, as Nicole has told us. Make your list. Is it top 3 or top 5?
Well, I always tell people between 3 and 5.
Okay.
Because it just depends. I always like to do the 5, but top 3 is I'll die if I don't have this,
okay.
type of, for lack of a better metaphor. But it's just one of those things where, and the reason why I say this is because when, let's say, the unforsaken thing happens, where you find a home that you fell in love with, and something happens and it falls through, and you have to find something else. If you take those same top 3 and you put it into another home, you're going to fall in love with that other home. That's true.
That's true.
The reason is because what you fell in love with were your top 3, were your top 5. You didn't actually fall in love with the structure.
Right. True.
You fell in love with what's on the inside of it, what it offers you.
Yeah.
And that's anything in life. We fall in love with what it offers us.
Right.
So if we do the top 3, top 5, we'll go ahead and stick with 5, but we'll do a top 3, then you can probably go to another one if you have to.
Right.
And fall in love with that one as well.
Right.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the 5 is good, though, because then it gives you room to deviate.
Yes.
So if you don't find, you can make the list as a top 5 and then say, okay, but out of the top 5, these 2 or 3 are the most important.
Right.
So that gives you some room. And that was a good point about, because most people, especially when they tell me what they're looking for, they never say one specific city. So that goes back to the list, because if you have a top 5, more than likely people tell me at least 2 different cities or 2 different areas. And so in doing that, goes in line with picking the top 3 to the top 5, because they'll say, okay, well, I want to go to Bowie, or I'll go to Glendale or Upper Marlboro. Well, if we can't find something in Bowie, we probably can find something in Glendale. And if we can't find something in Glendale, more than likely we can find something in Upper Marlboro, for example. So we still within those top 3 that they told us. So I definitely think that's important to have a list. And I don't think there's anything wrong with preparing these things before you even contact your real estate professional or your mortgage professional, so that you have some notes to discuss with them and you can kind of give them guidance, because the more information that you share with us, that you share with your mortgage professional and your real estate professional, the better we can assist you, because we don't want to send you a bunch of houses that you're really not interested in. Just like if you ask us for a recommendation to a mortgage professional, if you're really only interested in working with a bank, then we don't want to send you to a mortgage company. So the more information you have for us, the better we can help serve you.
Full disclosure.
Yeah, full disclosure. See? So it's very important to do that. And as Nicole has said, it's definitely like a relationship. And I keep going back to that point, because it's like you gather the information, and you spend time together, you ask questions, and all of that goes together to work towards the goal. Because if we don't know what you're thinking, and you don't know what we're thinking, because we're providing professional guidance as well. And so if we don't know that you're stressed or worried, because even if someone isn't, I don't know, is stress and worry the same thing?
Well, they go hand in hand.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily say they're the same thing, but they do go hand in hand.
Okay.
Because, when you're stressed out, a lot of times it's because you're worrying about something.
Okay.
We worry in several different ways.
Okay.
But some things can be self-induced.
Okay.
And I think that goes back to be able to decrease some of that is to be able to talk to your real estate agent, in particular, who can talk to someone else who they need to.
Okay.
But to share, okay, well, I'm getting frustrated right now. I'm getting stressed out because it seems like, you keep showing me X, Y, and Z, and this is what I'm looking for. Or they keep asking me for the same thing. So being able to verbalize exactly what it is that you're frustrated about will help to decrease that. Worrying may be something of the nature of, I'm not sure am I ever going to find what it is that I'm looking for, or I'm not sure if I'm ever going to do it by the end of the year. I'm not sure if I'm ever, so that excessive worrying will bring on the stress. So they're two different things, but they do go hand in hand.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely a concern. I know a lot of times what happens in the beginning stages when someone has submitted an offer is they kind of worry, is it going to be accepted? Because some sellers, they'll decide quickly, and they'll come back and they'll give their agent a verbal acceptance to send to the buyer's agent. But sometimes sellers will wait. They may wait over the weekend. So if it's Friday, they'll say, okay, we'll have an answer for you on Monday. That is nerve-wracking.
It is.
I don't really know.
It's a sales tactic, but it's just nerve-wracking.
I don't, it actually works sometimes, because I've had someone go back and edit their offer over the weekend. Like, we really want that house, so let's up our offer, or let's change this about it, so it goes from worrying to, okay, let's take action to, but it's important to just understand that these things do take time, and some people will move faster than others. So some sellers will give you faster responses. And that's just like also when it comes to when we request the showings. If it's occupied, sometimes it may be a 24-hour notice. I've seen as long as a 72-hour notice for buyers to go. So it definitely requires patience, and it's definitely a process. It's not something that happens quickly, unless it's an investor. It's a little different, because they're usually buying fixer-uppers that are vacant. But even with that, a lot of times with investors, they may buy bank-owned properties, or they may buy estate sales and things like that. And those sellers are kind of removed from the transaction. And what I mean by that is there's really no emotional connection to it. And so they're not really in a rush as someone that may live there or may have an emotional connection. And one of the main reasons why is because a lot of times they're not local. The seller is not local. That company or that bank is not here. They may be on a different time zone. So sometimes we have to work around that. That's like the short sale that I mentioned that started. She put her contract in March. The negotiator is in California, so we have to wait at least until about noon before we can reach out to him. But the good part about that is, on our end, if something comes up at 6 p.m., it's only 3 o'clock, or is it 3 or 4 hour time difference?
Depending on the time.
California?
It's like, I think it's a 3 hour difference.
Okay. So yeah, if something comes up at 6 p.m., we can still get him because it's only 3 o'clock there. So that's the good part about having that time difference. It's just in the morning it starts later. But in the evening, it's a good thing, but it still can be stressful because most people go to work early and they're like, okay, what's going on? You know, we haven't gotten an answer yet. We sent the message at 8 a.m.
Right.
He's in bed right now. He's not even awake yet. So, we have to wait till he gets there and then we can,
That goes along with managing the expectations.
This is true. This is true.
That's why you have to know everything up front. So
this is true.
Don't expect 8 o'clock in the morning if the person who you have to receive the information from is in California.
This is true. This is true. And, sometimes even when I set my own hours, my normal working hours are 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. And some people have frowned like, okay, 10 a.m. But I do that for two reasons. One, the time zone difference. If I need to get information from someone else that's not on my time zone, I usually can get it by around 11 a.m. So if the buyer contacts me or the seller contacts me or the mortgage professional or the title company, then I can reach out and say, okay, well, they're on a different time zone than us, so that'll give me time. But then also the reason why they're set like that is because I want to be available in the evening when the person may get off work. Because if they get off work at 5, 6, 6:30, I'm still available when they get off, because sometimes everyone is not able to have those conversations at work, and they may not want to because it's for private.
That's just private information. But I think that the point that you just brought up is good. Looking at your available hours, because sometimes there's some agents that are only available on the weekends. There's some that are only available during the day. Not everyone is flexible.
Yeah.
And so understanding the type of relationship that you're getting into with that person is important as well. That will help to reduce a lot of stress.
Definitely.
If I know that I can only meet with you on Saturdays at noon, I need to make sure that's what your availability is.
Yeah.
If it's not, then I need to move on and find someone who can meet those standards.
Definitely.
And that will help with your lessening your stress level as
Definitely.
So.
Yeah, because that could be frustrating if you're trying to meet with someone and your schedules are just clashing. So that's definitely understandable. But as Nicole said, definitely about having your expectations in line and just making sure it's realistic, because the market that we're in is fast-paced. We're still really in a seller's market, and some things, I met with someone over the weekend, and we were just discussing different things, and they were telling me when they bought their house that the seller gave them X amount of dollars to replace the carpet and do things like that. And the first question I asked was, well, what year was that? Because there's just not things that the sellers are doing now, because they really don't have to, because there really are more buyers than there are houses that they want to buy. There are always a bunch of houses for sale, but some are overpriced, some have more repairs than someone is looking for, and that's another thing, especially with first-time home buyers, because they're so ambitious, and they're like, okay, I watched that show on TV, and I can fix this house up, and I can do this, I can do that, and it's like, you can, but last week Steve was discussing that in detail, well, in semi-detail, and we're definitely going to have him back, because he was telling us about the renovation loans for FHA. And FHA is a common loan that first-time home buyers get, because it has a low down payment of 3.5%, and it's a little easier to qualify for than a conventional loan with regards to credit score. But the loan is available, and the money is definitely available to do those renovations. But you also have to keep in mind that, do you want to live in a construction zone? Because essentially, unless you're going to pay rent and mortgage at the same time, you're going to live in the house while you're having those repairs done. So that's something to keep in mind too. There's nothing wrong with a project, but maybe not a huge project. Maybe not a whole house renovation and you have to live there, or you and your family or whomever, it has to live in the construction zone, because that can be stressful. And people do it, but there are always options. I think there should always be a compromise. And I was thinking about that on my way here, because even, a lot of people, when they hear compromise, I feel like they think of it as limiting, or, okay, well, I can't afford they're saying I can't afford this, or I can't. It's not that. I mean, I've seen people with budgets over $1 million. I have a family right now that's relocating, and their target budget is $1.5 million. But because of what they're looking for, there are not a lot of houses that fit into and they don't even have that many things on their list. But their top 3, their number 1 thing is an indoor pool. So right there, we're already limiting a whole lot of houses
Mm-hmm.
because indoor pools are just not common in this area. And the good thing about them is they're willing to go, I would say, I think maybe 75 miles around DC, in Maryland. So that's good. But the other thing is they have to have 5 bedrooms. Well, houses with 5 true bedrooms, it's not that they're not that common, but it's going to be limiting because a lot of times when we look at listings, it may be listed as 5 bedrooms, but it's actually four. And that
Mm.
happened to me over the weekend. The house was listed as a 6 bedroom, but there were 4 bedrooms, and there was nowhere else in the house where it could possibly have been 2 other bedrooms. Nowhere at
Mm.
all. So, the buyer was really disappointed because they were looking forward to the six
The
bedrooms.
60, right?
So I think there always needs to be a compromise. And what I proposed to that family that wants the indoor pool, I said, well, maybe you can build your own indoor pool because definitely the yard space is going to be there because a house with 5 bedrooms and that would have had a pool is going to be a decent sized house.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my suggestion. Maybe you can build your own indoor pool. Maybe in the backyard there'll be room and then you can enclose it so it can be used in all four
Mm-hmm.
seasons or something like that. But it's important that when you have your items lined up that you're also willing to compromise. And I know a lot of people, I always have people who want a certain house in a certain area and it's really close to another area, and I'm saying to them, well, if you just go on over to that other
Mm-hmm.
area, I have people that are in Prince George's County, in the southern Prince George's County, and I'm telling them, you can get this same house in southern Maryland and you can stay in your price point. You won't have to, because what you're looking for in southern Prince George's County is going to be maybe 10% more, 10% more in PG County than it would be in Charles County.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that's the compromise. And I've had a lot of people. I had one family that I worked with since, I want to say it was last November. And then around this February, they started getting more serious. But I was telling them, if you just come on over to Charles County, you'll actually be able to find what you're looking for. You'll get the square footage. You'll get that style you're looking for. And they found a really nice home. And it was only maybe 10 years old. It was
Mm-hmm.
right at the price point they were looking for. But they had to make a compromise and come to Charles County. So it required them to be a little further away from work, but the house was worth it.
Right.
So that's the other thing, when you have your list, just be willing, especially location, because location can be tricky. Just if you can at all be a little bit open with your location. And that's not to say we want to take you completely to the other side of where you're looking at, but just the surrounding area. Because if you're already looking in, let's say, Upper Marlboro and Brandywine, Waldorf and Akakeek, maybe Fort Washington is not that far from those areas. So if you're willing to make that compromise, then it could actually be beneficial because you could potentially save money and get more house.
Right. Or if that location, you just have to be in a certain location, maybe because the school zone or the school system, then compromise somewhere else,
Hmm.
along that list. So
Definitely,
absolutely.
yeah. And sometimes price can be a compromise because some people, I know I had someone recently who was pre-approved for, I think it was 400,000,
Mm-hmm.
but initially they only wanted to go up to 275, and that's
Mm-hmm.
fine because what they were looking for, was okay. But the area that they were looking in, that was the
Mm-hmm.
problem. It was a kind of expensive area because there's a lot of new construction, and that's another thing. If it's an area that's
Mm-hmm.
heavily that's really heavy in new construction, the price for the resales is going to be a little higher because those people are getting equity.
Right.
They've gotten equity, so they're trying to cash in on that, and so the sales in the neighborhood are going to be a little more than neighborhoods that don't have that type of new construction. But that person that's approved for 400, they only want to stay at 275. Just through looking at homes and just going through different areas and submitting some offers that didn't get accepted, they've raised their price. And so now they're at the 350, 375
Mm-hmm.
mark. But it was necessary because they had to compromise on the price in
Absolutely.
order to stay in a certain area. And
Right.
for them, traveling would be an issue.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
they couldn't compromise on location and say go further so
Mm-hmm.
they can stay within that budget. And it took time. So it's not to say, whenever you have to compromise, it's usually not, okay, I'll go ahead and compromise, because you want what you want. You want what you want, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
Well, because we have that image in our head.
yes,
We have the image in our head, and a lot of times it's hard for us to get that image out of our head.
Is.
Well, especially when we hold on to something. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
this is the way it's supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
and it can't be any other way.
This
And
is
it's
true.
like, no, it can be. You just have to
This is true.
massage it a little bit,
Yeah.
and eventually we will change.
This is true. But it's definitely important to compromise. And like I said in the beginning, especially if it's your first house, even if it's your second house, it doesn't have to be your forever house. I think on average, people stay in their house for about 5 to 7 years. That's what I've seen, about 5 to 7 years. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be your forever house. But it could turn into your forever house, because you might say, hey, you know what, I'm going to put an extension on here, or I'm going to add a garage, or, that's always an option. So when you first go into it, you may not think it's your forever house, but it may end up being your forever house, because especially people that have decent space in their house already. And I'm like, well, do you really want to move? Because, if you just update, then you have the same thing as a new construction
Get a new
house.
house when you upgrade.
This is true. The only thing that they cannot always really do much about is the exterior. But if you can get past that, for the most part, especially if you've been in your house for a while, just do some renovations, and then you don't necessarily have to move. And sometimes when I meet with people, I do tell them that, are you sure you want to sell? And they look at me like I'm crazy, but because
But honesty helps with a good relationship.
It does.
So
It
that's
does.
very good.
It does. And then what'll happen is halfway through the process, they'll say, you know what? I don't really want to sell my house. I really want to keep it. Maybe I'll just rent it, or maybe especially when a lot of people, when they buy their first home, I try and help them get a house that would be a good rental, because it's always good to maintain that property. That's how you get generational wealth.
Absolutely.
A lot of us don't still have our childhood homes that we grew up in, but if you could start that legacy, for you and your family, that's
absolutely.
that's something.
I am 100% on board with that one. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So it's very important, but we'll definitely cover these topics. We'll definitely always go over stress management and how to deal with these processes, because it can be a stressful time, but once it's over, then it's all happy.
Yeah. And that's what probably one of the more important things to do is to just relax and breathe. Just know that we're going to be in this for a minute.
Yeah.
A minute is defined as 3 to 6 months. but then relax. Enjoy the process. A lot of times things become frustrating for us because we don't enjoy the process. Well, who enjoys going from house to house, getting turned down?
Well,
Who enjoys rejection?
Yeah,
I
don't.
At the end of the day, no one really enjoys rejection.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what we can do is we can enjoy the process of rejection. Spending the time with your agent, being able to look and see when you go into homes that. It may be your fifth one, but you may get a decorating idea for your new house.
This is true.
So try to find the positive in that, in going from house to house. Try to find the positive. Well, you know what? I got rejected from this one, but that just means I'm one step closer to the house that I really want to be living in. So just try to find the positive in all of that, all of this.
Yeah, I think we can find good in almost everything if we try. If we try.
It takes some work, but you definitely can find a good in everything.
Yeah.
It just takes work.
Yeah. So I hear that you have a new office.
I do.
Oh my goodness.
I do.
I'm so excited. Yay.
It's very exciting.
Yay. If we could just show some photos of your new office, and if you could just tell us a little bit about your location. Oh, it's so pretty.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I am in Camp Springs, Maryland. And for those that don't know, I'm a licensed therapist in Maryland and in D.C., but my office is in Camp Springs, Maryland. And this office actually was decorated by my mom.
Oh, wow. We definitely have to have her
she helped me decorate it. It was painted by a friend of mine.
Okay.
We have like this really good parent group.
Okay.
And so a lot of the times they come out and help out. And so being as though that one of the males, he actually was like, hey, I'll help you paint.
Okay.
So one evening he came over with his music, and
Oh, wow.
so I have to thank Rob for that.
Okay.
And
Thanks,
then
Rob.
yeah,
That's
and
great.
then on a Saturday, that's just one office of that show. But on a Saturday and on a Sunday, I had a group of friends. One of my closest friends, Sinyan and
Okay.
Carlicia and
Hi,
Christina, and
Simone, Carlicia,
my
and Christina.
mom and my assistant. They came over, and we did sanding, and we did wiping down.
Oh,
We did
wow.
painting. Yeah, we did
Oh,
taping.
wow.
Michelle came up one time and she taped for me.
Okay.
So I had a great team, a great support
I
system.
wasn't invited.
You weren't invited. You
I feel a
absolutely
way
weren't.
about this.
You know
I
why?
wouldn't have been too much help because I'm not good at that type of stuff. I could have provided more support.
I truly try to get the word out and ask whoever can help. And I have to say my support system, they really
That's
came
good,
through for
though.
me. And we painted 2 rooms in a lobby.
Okay.
So
Sounds good.
absolutely.
It's
So.
definitely beautiful. So tell us, how long have you been in mental health?
Oh, wow. I've been actually for over 20 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I started off, so I got my master's down in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay.
And while I was working through my master's at A&T, and let me first start off with, I got my bachelor's from Bennett.
Okay.
Because it takes a bell to do it well. But while I was working through my master's program, I started working as a case manager
Okay.
with what we call the William kids. And so they were the children of mental health illness,
Okay.
mental health patients.
Okay.
And so they, of course, and most of them, both of their parents had been a mental health patient.
Oh, wow.
And so they actually inherited some of the illnesses that their parents had.
Okay.
And it was a government contract, and we worked through that. And I did about 2 years with them doing that, and then graduated and had the bright idea to come back home. And when I came back home, I started looking, and it just, I knew what I wanted to do. I had that vision in my mind as to where I wanted to be. But I landed at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore.
Okay.
And I did something so totally out the box. I started going into homes and doing community therapy.
Okay.
And I did it for about a good year, and at that time I was still living with my parents, and my mother would make me take my shoes off when I came home, because I would go into like the rough of the rough homes, and they weren't so clean.
Right.
And it was like, okay, this is not what they taught me in school. This is not the way it was. This is not the vision in my head that I was supposed to be doing. And so, but I did that for about a year, and then I transferred over to a more traditional mental health clinic.
Okay.
And I did that for about 7 years.
Okay.
And then one day I woke up. I just woke up one morning really early, and I just kind of looked up at the sky, and I was like, God, it has to be more than just this. I can't keep just doing this. It was frustrating me. And I had the bright idea to leave. And I left, and I actually did sales. And I worked there for a couple of years, and
that's
did
how you give us all these tips about sales. I forgot that you were in sales.
It's the weirdest thing, but there's a whole psychology behind sales. And so I used every skill that I had learned, and I enjoyed it. It was exciting. But it still wasn't enough. It just still wasn't enough for me. And then I went back into the whole world of mental health, but I went in as a contractor.
Okay.
And so I started hustling for every dollar I made. and that was great. Just because of life circumstances, I had the idea that I needed to go back to a 9-to-5. So in 2013, I did just that. God gave me exactly what I asked for. So I did just that. And I only lasted for 14 months.
Well, you lasted longer than I lasted in my 9-to-5.
Because, I'm just not a 9-to-5 girl. And so after that, I started doing contractional work. And from there, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to open up my practice. It was the reason why I left Johns Hopkins years ago. And so I saw myself as running. And finally, life brought me right back to what I was running from. And so you see this now.
That's funny. But
So,
yeah,
yeah.
when I was telling people that I would have a mental health therapist on the show, they're like, "What?" And I was like, "There's a psychology to sales.
It's
There
a whole
definitely,
psychology to sales.
yeah." And I didn't even really know what it was, but I always thought about it. Once I had gotten really back in contact with you, and I was like, there's got to be some way that we can incorporate this because so many things come up,
Absolutely.
and it's difficult. My background is sales, but psychology is not my background. But sometimes we need other professionals to help us throughout this process because it can get crazy sometimes and it can be very overwhelming. Like I said, they're asking for everything except skin cells.
Absolutely. And they're going to ask for that next.
Right? Put your thumbprint here. Let me scrape your scalp. It can be quite stressful. I hate to keep using the same word over and over again, but it's really true because it's so much. It's one of the biggest decisions and largest purchases that a person will ever make. Yeah, it's
and
definitely
we're afraid
a commitment.
of commitment. Our society's afraid of commitment. And so it's a big commitment.
It is. And this week I had the pleasure of attending a career day and being a speaker at Career Day. And I got to go to different classrooms. I had a first grade class. I think it was 2 first grade classes and a second grade class. And those kids were ready for me. They had questions for me. It was so cute, And I was explaining to them what things are important in this field. And they were like, really? I wouldn't think math is important, or I wouldn't think. And I even learned from them. The teacher said, why would it be important for her to know what an array is? And I thought she was saying arrays. Because it was kind of a little noisy in there. And then they explained it and she wrote it on the board and I had no idea. And I'm so glad I don't have children. I have to help them with their homework because they would get 2 Fs, one for them and one for me. Because I would not be able to.
You'll learn, trust me.
No. But, there's never a dull day in real estate. Every day is different. I meet different people and talk to different people every day. So it's never the same thing. And that's one thing I love about it because I never know what to expect. When I get up in the morning, it's like, okay, so what's going to go on today, But what's the highlight of your week? Or last week?
Well, the highlight, I guess, seeing my clients in my new office.
Okay.
So I actually have one particular set of a mother-daughter duo that have been seeing me since I was renting from someone else. And so they've kind of followed me. And it felt really good for her to say, wow, this is you.
Oh, wow.
And for her to say that, I was like, you're right, it is me. And so I kind of led by example because I've been coaching them throughout their process of the things that they've been going through. And in coaching them, I've had to take my own advice. And so I've been able to lead by example. And so that was the end product for me to show her, hey, I jumped and the parachute opened.
Yeah, because you definitely want the parachute to open if you take that leap. But that's good, though. And give us your phone number and how to contact you.
So you can call me at 202-507-3713 or House of Steel, and that's HOUSEOFSTILL @gmail.com.
Okay. I was like, wait, okay. Okay. So, yeah, next week, I think we're going to see if we can have Steve come back.
Okay.
If not, the following week, because I really want to delve into that 203K program. It's another aspect of it that he mentioned that I had no idea about, where someone can get their house renovated on a larger scale. And he was telling me, there's a lot of paperwork involved and things like that. And I want him to go over that. He said he may even bring some props. So, that'll be very good. So we're going to focus on that. And I'll be reaching out to see if we have some other professionals. I'll definitely reach out to your mom. I just didn't have a chance because I got a little sick this week. So I didn't have a chance to reach out to her. But I definitely want to reach out to her and have her come on and share with us about interior design and redecorating and just things like that. Because we want to keep it interesting for you, our viewers. We want you to be educated and informed. We don't want to bore you. This is not your typical real estate sales show where we're trying to buy, hurry up and buy. just hurry up and sell your house and, and things like that. We're not trying to do that. We want you to be informed. We want you to be educated.
Absolutely.
So you can move forward and make a good decision.
And make sure you tell us what the highlight of your week was.
I did about the career day.
Oh,
when I went to career
gotcha.
day. Yeah. So thank you for joining us, and we hope that you will come back and join us next week.
Thank you.